Okay, when you're in church, there's always one sure way of getting everybody's attention, and that is to say, let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time. Father, we thank you that you have called us into your kingdom, that you've called us into your service. Father, we thank you for the hope that we have, the hope that you are on your throne, you love us, and you're providing for us, and you care for us. That hope gives us strength this day. We pray for your blessing for us who are here, for us, your people, who are scattered throughout the world. We ask your blessing upon our time together tonight as we study about you and your working in the world. We pray that you would guide us, direct us, give us wisdom, give us strength. I pray in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. We were not planning to be here. In fact, we have tickets to return on Tuesday to Ukraine, but obviously we're not going to be doing that. As you know, we come to the States every year. We used to come to the States every other year during the summer, and we see all of our supporting churches. Now we come to the States each year at Christmas time and January, part of February, and we see part of our churches one time, part of the next time. We were here 2 years ago, and you remember what happened 2 years ago. That was COVID, and we ended up getting stuck here for 7 months. So last year, we decided it was a good idea to stay in Ukraine. Thought that would be a good idea. It was. So we thought it would be fine to come now. And so again, we are stuck here in Ukraine. We bought our plane tickets and this past August to fly to the States at Christmas time, and then to return tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. But obviously, we're not going to be returning the day after tomorrow. When we realized that, we started to say, okay, we're here. Let's try to update those churches that we didn't see a year or so ago. And so we called your church, and they said, yes, come tonight. And so that's why we are here. This will be a little bit different service than usual. We have slides, and I can talk about those slides if you'd like for me to. You just sit there and listen. But I'd really rather you ask questions. I'd really rather interact with you. So we'll be very glad to I will try to follow your questions, your lead, and we'll tell you about some of the things that are happening in Ukraine. Let me start out by explaining something. You got questions, I don't know. That's my answer, okay? If you want to ask what Putin's going to do, I don't know. You want to ask about that? There's an awful lot of questions that I do not know the answer to. We get our information from the news, just like you do. Now, because we live in Ukraine and we pay attention to the news, and we look at that a lot and have for a number of years, we might be better able to read and analyze what's being reported than you might be, because we pay attention to that a lot. One of the things that I have said to people about the news, people ask me, is that accurate, is that reliable, is that dependable? And what about the American media? I said, I don't normally watch the American media concerning the Ukrainian situation. And here's why. The BBC, the British media, is closer. The German media, Deutsche Welle, is closer. The French also have a news station called France 24. They're closer. Or even the Arabic station, Al Jazeera. Those are in that area, and they actually do a very good job of reporting this fact. Here's a picture. Here's a list of comments. Here's a picture. And we usually do that off the internet and read the text. What happens often in America is the American media knows that during the day, when things are happening in Ukraine, they're 8 hours ahead of us. See, it's 2 o'clock in the morning right now in Ukraine. So if you turn on your local news and it says breaking news, that is not breaking news. What they did is they took something that happened 6 or 8 hours ago that has already been reported on European news stations and on European news outlets, and simply putting that on as a headline, trying to keep viewers watching and trying to make that sometimes as dramatic as possible. So understand that. when you watch the local news and it says breaking news from Ukraine. That's real, but it may or it may not be as dramatic as is being reported. And also, they may be reporting that out of context. That may be a real thing, but that's not what's happening everywhere. So you just need to be cautious about that. Let me give you a little bit of background, a little bit of context to, in case you hadn't been watching the news lately, okay? 30 years ago, when the Soviet Union broke apart into 15 separate and independent countries. Young people, pay attention because I'm going to give you a test on this, okay? So the geography test. 30 years ago, when the Soviet Union broke apart, came apart into 15 separate independent countries. Many of those countries were not a part of the Soviet Union voluntarily. And so they very quickly said, we want to go join Europe, or join NATO, or be friends with the West and be friends with the United States. And many of those countries said, we want to get as far away from Russia's control as we possibly can. Russia couldn't do anything about it. They were a weak, poor nation 30 years ago. Now, that was 30 years ago. Past 10 years, Russia has become a much stronger, much more better off country than they were 30 years ago. And so they've tried to regain a lot of influence that they had many, many years ago during the glory of the Soviet Union. And they have been trying to exert that influence on their area. 8 years ago, they annexed Crimea, took that as part of Russia. And they also stirred up, let me just give you a geography lesson. Here we are in the southern part of Ukraine on the Black Sea. This is where we live, right on the seacoast. Way up there, 350 miles, okay, Ukraine's the size of Texas. 350, 40 miles way up there is the other border, is the Belarusian border. And our capital is about 50 miles south of the border, but it's way up there. Russia is on that side, Europe is on that side. 8 years ago, they took Crimea. You just lost your piano, okay? They took this part, and that happened without any conflict. These people really didn't care whether they were in Ukraine or in Russia. They probably did a little bit, but it wasn't a big deal. No bloodshed, no big deal. Had Russia stopped right there, that probably would not have been that big of a deal, but they didn't. They stirred up trouble on the border inside of Ukraine. So here's the Russian-Ukrainian border. Inside of Ukraine, they stirred up trouble in 6 or 8 counties in North Mississippi. That's the size of the area. Stirred up trouble inside of this area. And there has been an ongoing active conflict for the past 8 years. About 14,000 people have died. Okay, so a few people die every week. Ongoing conflict, but it's kind of a stalemate, so that hadn't been in the news. Once things stop changing, that's not in the news anymore. But that's been going on. Russia is trying to exert more and more influence. I said 30 years ago, things break apart. Some of the countries joined Europe, some of them joined NATO. All right, Europe and NATO and the United States took advantage of the weakness of Russia. They just did, all right? Russia's very unhappy about that. The United States is pushing and Europe's pushing in one direction. Now, during the past 10 years, Russia has been pushing back in the other direction. And where do they meet? Ukraine. That is a central issue. Now, there's a whole lot of other issues, and there's a whole lot of very complicated issues involved there. But Russia has done some military exercises in this area. They, in the past few months, put a lot of troops, I don't know how many, in excess of 100,000. Some people say 150, some people say almost 200,000 troops on the border. What's the border? There's all that side right there, and your piano up here, this is the part they annexed. All that part, as well as the northern part of Belarus, as well as put a lot of ships out there in your baptistry, okay? Because that's the water right at the Black Sea, right outside of the city of Odessa. So we live right on the seacoast. So they threatened us on three sides. Poland and European countries are over there on that side. That's the situation that has developed, and it has erupted in the past few days. What do I mean it's erupted? Let's just back up a few weeks. 3 weeks ago or so, the American Embassy, they send us emails all the time. We got one a while ago. They send us emails all the time. 3 weeks ago, they said to Americans, we really highly recommend that you get out. We do not want to repeat Afghanistan where we have Americans stuck. We want you to get out. We want you to get out now while you can, while there's not a problem. And if you stay, you need to have a plan that does not include us, because we are not going to be able to help you. And they were very clear to American citizens about that. And so a number of Americans left 3 weeks ago, but a number of Americans who call that home decided to stay. 2 weeks ago, the American Embassy up there in Kyiv moved over here to the Polish border, almost to the Polish border, because everybody believes that this part of Ukraine is a lot safer. These people hate Russians. They speak the Ukrainian language. Those people over there speak the Russian language. Pam and I speak Russian. We don't speak Ukrainian. We live in a Russian-speaking area. The difference between the two languages, if you're speaking Ukrainian, I will struggle to understand you. If you're preaching in Ukrainian, Pam will poke me a lot because I'm going to be falling asleep. I do that sometimes when you're preaching in Russian too. But we live in a Russian-speaking area. But the people over here on this side, they are very anti-Russian. The people over there on that side in our area kind of don't care too much. At least they didn't 8 years ago. When Russia started this conflict inside of Ukraine 8 years ago, Ukrainians and Russians got along very well. What's the difference between Ukrainians and Russians? There's not any. They are ethnically, culturally the same people. Kind of like Mississippi and Tennessee. Well, maybe there's a little difference between there. But you understand what I'm talking about. They can go back and forth across the border, no problem. I mean, I'll show you some pictures in just a moment. In our old house where Regina and Sasha live, and you're going to see some of Regina's friends who are married to a person from Russia. One has a Ukrainian passport, the other has a Russian passport. There's no difference. They don't think anything about that. All right? The American Embassy 2 weeks ago moved over here. Regina also, and our two granddaughters, the three of them have American passports. Our two granddaughters were born in Ukraine, and they also have Ukrainian passports. Everybody knew that if something happens right here on the Black Sea, and all this territory right here is going to be a major target for whatever happens. They knew that. Nobody really thought much was going to happen over there. So Regina and our two granddaughters got in a car and drove to stay with some friends over here. That's where they have been up until this morning, early. They crossed the border into Romania. Pam will tell you about that in just a moment. But that's what they did. So they're staying here in the western part of Ukraine for the past week and a half or so. 2 weeks ago on Monday, I got a phone call from our college. They said, Ray, we need to come up with an evacuation plan. We need to come up with a plan for getting things out of here. I do the technology and computers and those kinds of things. I'm supposed to be staying in front of the camera here, by the way. I do the technology and those kinds of things. They said, Ray, where's the technology? Where are the things that are valuable and important? Where are the hard drive backups? Where are our files stored? And we need to get all those things out of your office and evacuate that right now. We need to pick up all the high-priced, expensive things that we can. We need to get that away from the college right now. Why did they do that? Well, 8 years ago, when the conflict started over here on the border, we had a sister Bible college. And when Russian soldiers came into that area, they said, you have 1 hour to evacuate the college. They took it over and used it as army barracks. And we suspected that something like that would happen at our college if Russia took the city of Odessa. And we knew that it was a target area. So they packed up my office, they packed up all of our official papers, they packed up our documents and at our college, and what they didn't pack up, they burned. And they also said, we've got a plan how to move people. Here's where we're going. They set up pre-arrangements over there on that far border with Poland, a place with a church for the seminary, Bible college employees and their families. We have about 25 families at our Bible college. These are Ukrainians, okay? I'm the only Pam and I are the only long-term resident Americans living there. So they've come up with this plan. Then the American embassy moved a little further and across the border into Poland. They kept sending us emails that said, things are getting difficult. We really recommend that you get out. If you're going to stay, you need to contact us and let us know for sure. But we really recommend that you get out. This past Thursday, we woke up to our computer and phone lighting up with messages one after the other one saying that the conflict has begun, and that has been the case since then. Any questions or comments so far?
You're doing fine.
What's that?
You're doing fine. You're so content.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure, because I'm going to give a test at the end of this, and I just want to make sure that you were, getting that everything down. Yes.
The Russians landed near Odessa. Have they gone into Odessa?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they have. What has come as somewhat of a surprise is that, well, first of all, there's a lot of predictions as to what was going to happen. Is Russia just bluffing and nothing's going to happen? Is Russia just going to take a couple of areas here to help them link up some of the areas that they're very interested in right here along the coast? Is Russia going to take this Russian-speaking area? Is Russia just going to come into Kiev and overthrow the government and install a pro-Russian government? Or is Russia going to just take the whole country and redraw the borders completely? Well, they've attacked literally the entire country. So Sasha is still here in the south and the center of the country. Regina has been over on the border of western Ukraine, over on the border of Poland. She says, yeah, we hear explosions at night in our area. There are artillery and missile fire in our area. She woke up. We woke up Friday morning. She said, didn't sleep well. They blew up the airport last night, next door to us. that kind of thing. So that's been happening but relatively safe. But that's been happening in that area. Sasha says, yes, there's explosions in Odessa. Yes, they are in Odessa. There's fighting in Odessa. Probably the two areas of greatest fighting have been up there in the north, the capital of Kiev, and another place called Kharkov. Some people pronounce it incorrectly, Kharkiv or something like that. Just reading but anyway, those two areas, two large cities. Capital city of Kiev is a city of 3.5 million people or so, and Kharkov is about 1.5 million people. Was there a question? Oh. Okay. So that has been, there has been an increasing conflict since Thursday morning. Actually, there was a build-up to that. There was increased sporadic, we call them ceasefire violations. That's when people are shooting each other, not supposed to. It's called a ceasefire violation. That was going on over here for the past week and intensifying every day. And that's turned into an all-out actual tanks rolling across the border over in that area. last Monday, actually, last weekend we spoke at Antioch Christian Church down near Jackson. And we were driving back and we began to look at the situation. And we said, okay, if something happens, internet's going to go off, electricity's going to go off, cell phones are going to go off, the banks are going to close, and gas stations are going to be out. And we said, what can we do to help Ukrainians? And also, what can we do? As I said, our college had this evacuation plan. Now, here's a question for you. I told you that our daughter, Regina, moved over here a week and a half ago. Ukrainians did not move until people started shooting on Thursday. Why? Money. Money. If you have to, hurricane is coming, okay? Get in your car and drive 15 hours over there, find you a motel, and live for 2 or 3 weeks. What's that going to do to your economic situation? You're not going to be working. Regina said just for her to move costs $500. Americans can afford that, okay? She went to stay with friends. Everybody doesn't have those friends scattered everywhere. So Ukrainians did not want to do that until the last minute. We want to keep working at our job. We don't want to pay the cost of traveling, pay the cost of living away from home and on the road. That's expensive. So 1 week ago, Pam and I were coming back from Jackson, said, what can we do? We called Regina and we called Sasha. Sasha's our Ukrainian son-in-law. And the college was arranging a bus and a place to stay. They were arranging this kind of organized evacuation. Sasha said, no, that's not what you need to do. You need to put cash in the hands of the college employees and tell them to take care of themselves the best they can. Because some of them want to do that, and they would need that money. Some of them want to go stay with their relatives over there or somewhere else, and they can do it something different. And some of them want to stay in Odessa. So Sasha's recommendation, this is a Ukrainian solution, was you need to put cash in the hands of Ukrainians to let them make the choice and to do that. Now, let me just ask you a question, and your church supports our work and has for many years. When you give money, so let's say today you take up some money and you give money, how long does that money take to get to Ukraine? All right, let's just say you collect some money, and who's your treasurer? Anyway, the treasurer writes out a check, and they mail that to our secretary, who handles our finances in Fulton. Takes a couple of days. She checks the mail once a month. Now, don't worry, that's fine. That's what I told her to do, okay? But then she may actually check the mail more often than that. But she sits down and opens all those contribution envelopes once a month. She's a volunteer, okay? So she goes through that and she sends out a receipt once a month. She does our finances one day a month. And so then she tells me, hey, church sent us money, we got this money. And then she's got to transfer that to a different account, which can be sent to Ukraine. So that process takes a month, sometimes maybe 6 weeks. That's normal. That's absolutely no problem. Don't think that's slow. That's just the way it works. But how do you do it faster? These people, this situation, they need money. They need help right now. The average salary in Ukraine for our college employees is about $400 a month, $400 or $500 a month. And so and Regina just spent that getting there, okay? How do we help Ukrainian employees of our Bible college? Sasha says what we need to do is put money directly in their hands and let them use it in the best way they possibly can to buy food. So Pam and I came up with the idea, and you got a letter talking about the Ukrainian crisis situation that said, we're going to here we are in the States, and so we're out of harm's way. We're going to take our emergency fund and pre-position that into Ukraine as quickly as we can. we're going to move money, $25,000, to Ukraine as quickly as we can so that Sasha can use that to help people cover the cost of evacuation. And who are we talking about? We're talking about employees of our Bible college. Because you might rebuild the building, but if something happens to the employees and the teachers, these are Ukrainians, they're all national people. We're not talking about Americans. If something happens to them, then you don't have a future, okay? So these people need help evacuating or securing, buying food and getting things where they are in place there in Odessa. So we began I set out on Monday and wrote and worked on that letter and sent that out. And we also began to send to Sasha to send money to Ukraine. How do you send money to Ukraine? Anybody know? Your local bank doesn't know either. I'm serious, because most local banks do not do international transactions. That's not what they normally do. We have a special account and has debit cards on that account, and it's with something that regularly does international transactions. So we can take those cards, go to a Ukrainian ATM, put that card in, and pull out local currency. That's what we started doing beginning of the week. Thursday, when conflict began, there was a run on the ATMs and they ran out of money. So you can't get money from the ATM machine, you can't get money from banks, so you can't get cash. Ukraine is an all-cash society, normally. It's normally an all-cash society. The only thing that we use a debit card for is to pull money out, and then we spend cash. That's the way we operate, and that's the way most Ukrainians operate in Ukraine. So that's what happened on Thursday, stopped in cash. So, what do we do? Oh, by the way, here's Regina. This is Regina, and our 11-year-old granddaughter, Emily, and our 7-year-old granddaughter, Evelina, right here. These two are not ours, okay? They're friends that they're staying with. Several things happened Thursday. Thursday, Friday, Saturday began immediately. This is one of the things we knew this was going to happen. This is what was going to happen at the grocery store, and this is the next thing that's going to happen. Those are our grocery cards too, by the way, or Sasha's. So we said to Sasha, okay, you can't get money out. Now, he did stockpile some actual cash to help pass out to our Ukrainian employees. But then we said, hey, you can take that debit card and you can go to the grocery store and you buy as much as you can. And you can pay for that with that debit card, and then you can pass out food. And so here's one of our Ukrainian employees right here. She said, well, I need this and this for this week, whatever like this. So I said, wait a minute. We're not shopping for this week. We're shopping for the next 3 months. Fill up the shopping cart, okay? And when we check out, we'll just cover the cost, okay? Because the grocery store is going to be empty. He said from this day to the next day, half of the things that were on the shelves have been gone. Now, they've got a nighttime curfew, and Regina says it's really hard for grocery stores and things like that to restock. Even if they do have those things, even if it is safe to drive and get out, that restocking the stores is a really difficult thing right now. This is our college. In this picture, most families have already evacuated. We've got one woman here, and I think a second one right there. These are some of the men who stayed behind. Some of them have already gone now. In this picture, I told you that Sasha is staying at their home, which is where we used to live, there in the city of Odessa. When we built a smaller house several years ago, they moved into our house. This is the house where Regina and Sasha live. This is a full basement. It's about 1,000 square feet. It has 2 floors above that, which are also 1,000 square feet. So they got 3,000. It's a large house, about 3,000 square feet, all brick. So this is where Sasha is. Who are the other 15 people in the picture? Okay, the other 15 people in the picture are friends and relatives who showed up and said, you've got a better, safer house than we do. And so when things started exploding in the city of Odessa, those people showed up and moved in. And Sasha wrote, where do I find sheets and pillows for 15 people? Okay, so They've got, some of those are relatives of Sasha who showed up there. This guy right here has a Russian passport, is ethnic Russian. This is his wife, a good friend of Regina's. So that's who's there in that picture. This is Sasha at the grocery store. We got cooking oil. Buy all you can because it's going to be gone tomorrow. This is one of the secretaries at the college, and Sasha, they've been to the grocery store. This is Sasha's van. They've picked up and bought whatever they can, and they've got food packages to give out. As I said, we're giving those. We're helping. Our project was to pre-position as much money as we could to help the families of our employees, to preserve our college family. Regina got very much involved in this, and one of the things that Regina does is work with the Women's Center. Let me, Pam, tell you a couple things about what Regina does.
Regina is a doctor in Ukraine. I think some of y'all already know that. She works with the Women's Center. This is a picture of the Women's Center inside there. She teaches prenatal classes. She teaches abstinent classes. She teaches, does counseling for women that have had abortions and need counseling, have regretted it, need counseling. She does all of that kind of stuff. Anything that a pregnant or wannabe pregnant woman needs, that's the kind of things that she does there. She also has a medical team that goes with her twice a week out to the villages that have no doctors, and she sees them. Most of that is going to be high blood pressure or high sugar or something like that, but she sees them and they give them medicine. So that's the kind of things that she does.
Okay, Regina, and what Pam's referring to here, these are church-based activities. And so they are Christian people from the church who are volunteering in this ministry. And Regina's also helping to raise funds for this project. And so she said, I want that to also include help assistance for the volunteers, Christian church volunteers, in our Women's Center program. So we're providing assistance to our college to help them with food and things locally, help them with transportation, and also to the volunteers who are working in the Women's Center. Any questions so far?
Are the Ukrainians able to possess firearms, personal firearms?
Gun ownership is not nearly as popular in Ukraine as it is here in the States. I do want to say that they have the draft in Ukraine, and so most men have military training. Now that's one difference between here, but most men do not own a gun. I mean, people don't normally hunt. My next door neighbor hunts, but most people don't normally hunt. So gun ownership is relatively low in Ukraine, but they are familiar with how to handle a gun or whatever like that. So there has been, in the news, passing out weapons to whoever wants one. That's probably a little stretch, a little exaggeration. But they have been passing out, trying to arm people who do actually have some military training, but are not active in the service now. And that is reported to actually be somewhat effective in what's going on right now with some of the resistance movements. Yes?
How far is it from Kyiv to Odessa?
It's 5 hours by car, 8 or 9 hours by train. It's about 300 or 400 miles. So, yeah, there's a nice 4-lane highway. Yes?
You answered part of my question, Mark. You said there were some people that don't care whether it's Russia or takes over or not.
Wait a second. Let me correct myself. I did say that, but I said that was the case 8 years ago. This conflict has made Ukrainians hate Russia. It's also made them switch from speaking Russian to speaking Ukrainian. It's politically correct for people to speak Ukrainian. Pam and I have a problem. We don't speak Ukrainian. Now, that's not a problem for us speaking, but it is a problem for us understanding. So if we get somebody who's preaching in Ukrainian, I'm going to go to sleep. I can kind of follow what's going on, but not very well. Yes.
So you're saying if Russia just consistently pushes on, it's going to be an all-out war to the end?
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that Ukrainians are not going to embrace Russia as some kind of liberating force. Putin went in and said, I'm going to save all these Russian-speaking people who want me to come in. They do not want you to come in. Somebody should have told them that, but they don't. They do not want you to come in, and that's why they're fighting back, okay? So, no, most Ukrainians want nothing to do with Russia. But they were not enemies, and 8 years ago, they were back and forth across the border without ever blinking an eye. Okay? Other questions? Yes, ma'am?
What about Zelensky? He's kind of come out to be clearly a hero in all this for great reason. Has he
Okay,
been
so-
that love before now? Is that great
Okay,
reason?
Zelensky. All right. I think every country has crazy presidents. We've certainly had our share of them. Where, no matter which side of the political aisle you're on, you would agree with the statement, we've certainly had our share of them. Ukraine has had its share of crazy folks as president. A number of Ukrainian presidents literally have been in jail before becoming president, and some after as well. Zelensky is the current Ukrainian president. What qualified him to be president? He played a president on TV. He's a comedian and an actor, okay? Now, he had no political experience, and he played a president on a TV show. So he thought he'd be good in real life, okay? But you are correct. He's turned out not to be as bad as he could be, okay? In fact, I don't know who else would be better. And I don't follow Ukrainian politics. I really couldn't comment. I mean, he's a relatively young guy, and that's probably better than having someone who's old and only knew and grew up in the Soviet system. So he's somewhat Western, or he's very pro-Western, but he's somewhat Western in terms of his understanding of the West and how the world works. So, yeah, he's turned out to be
surprised
pretty.
people.
What's that?
He has surprised people.
He has surprised people. That's probably a very good way of saying it. He's turned out to be pretty good. Other questions?
What is Ukraine? Stop.
His passport's Ukrainian. He speaks Russian to Regina at home. He's fluent in Ukrainian, but he normally speaks, and most people who speak Ukrainian in the Odessa speak a mixture of Russian and Ukrainian. They speak Southern slang. And so at home, with his parents, I can't understand what they're saying. It's not Russian, and it's not Ukrainian. It's a mixture of those two things. So, but he does understand Ukrainian and does speak Ukrainian well. Okay. Other questions? This would be the slides that I'd normally be showing you if I wasn't talking about the current conflict of Pamela. And you've seen some of the pictures on the news of snow. Yeah, a lot of Ukraine has snow right now. And actually Putin, everybody understands that Putin chose this time of the year because the ground's frozen. And when you're moving tanks, that's important. And some of our Ukrainian families moving from the college to Western Ukraine have written back and talked about going across a cow pasture or about driving across somebody's field because bridges were blown up along the road, kind of thing. And so it's good that the ground is frozen. And so when you are moving, they had to go use a lot of the back roads and those kinds of things. Let me just give you a couple of words about thinking about the back roads and those kinds of things. One of the things that I got from the American Embassy today was they said, okay, the American Embassy said that that's fine, it happens at the church in Ukraine too. Yeah, don't worry about it. The American Embassy said that in many cases in Ukraine it's not safe to be out. There's a a curfew from Friday evening until Monday morning in Ukraine, not a dusk to dawn, a several-day curfew. Don't get out of your house. Don't go out at all. So the American Embassy said, if you are somewhere, you are probably best to stay there. And if you're planning to cross the border, when you go, you need to take 2 days' worth of food to stand in line at the border. There's a 60-hour waiting in line to cross the border in some locations. So they were saying, look, you need to plan to take food because you're going to be standing in line waiting to cross the border. I'll let Pam tell you. So we got a phone call a few hours ago from Regina who said, I have already crossed the border, but I didn't cross the Polish border, which is where most people are crossing. I went and I crossed the Romanian border, okay?
Okay, this is the details that we got. Sasha said, it's not safe to be here. I want you out of the country. So she said this happened on Saturday night. She said they got in a car. Sasha had some friends that met them, took their car because it was Regina's car. You could take the car across the border, but what are you going to do with it once you get across the border?
When you get to the airport.
So friends of theirs came and got them and took them as close as they could drive to the border. This is two men, so they couldn't go to the border.
Which was 6 miles. So as close as they could, there was a 6 mile line of cars waiting to cross the border with their cars. Okay.
So they parked the car as best they could. The 2 men got out with Regina and the 3 kids. And
2 girls. We only have
the
2.
2 girls.
Well, you know what I know. I thought we only had 2.
Took the girls and Regina and what luggage they had, which I'm assuming was backpacks, and got them as close as they could get to the border without being at the border. And then the men had to leave, and Regina and the girls walked the rest of the way to the border. They said that it was unbelievable, the volunteers, even on the Ukrainian side, that were there to give you water, to give you food, to give you anything you needed to help you get the rest of the way.
They chose this border crossing because it's a very small, not significant border crossing. It's not like the border crossings into Poland, where there was, as I said, a 60-hour waiting line, 60-hour waiting line to get your car across the border. So they did have to walk 6 miles.
So I think altogether they drove 5 hours and then they had to walk 6 miles. So that's
and then they were waiting. She said 3 or 4 hours to actually cross the border. Okay.
So they crossed the border, had no problems crossing the border. Another one of Sasha's friends met them at the border and picked them up. She said also there were tents set up. Volunteers in Poland had set up tents. They had food. She said more food than we could possibly eat. They had all of that set up. And so they got in the car with the friend of Sasha's, and they drove to his house. So I don't know the names of all these places. So they drove somewhere in Romania to spend the night. They are leaving tomorrow night. They have to drive.
They're leaving tomorrow morning, driving to capital Romania.
Yeah, they have to drive 5 hours, and then they leave at night on the airplane, headed to New Orleans, and they'll be in New Orleans at 4:15 on Tuesday.
So, yes, sir.
What about the student lifestyle? What's happening with them?
Okay, let me just say that. Let me click through a few pictures here right quick. All right, so this is Regina, and one of our youngest grandchildren. This is our other daughter who lives in Hattiesburg. These are some students at our house. This is Sasha right up here. All right. You asked about our students. Over the past several years, over the past 5 to 10 years, we have decreased the number of resident students living on our campus and increased the number of non-resident students. For our college, the way we operate is most of our students come in for a 2-week period of classes. They take 2 weeks of intensive classes, and then they go back to their church and they stay there. And then 2 months, 3 months later, they come back to the college. So we're talking about less than 10 students on our campus. And they probably went home. So we're not talking about, our college has around 200 students per year at any moment in time, but they're never all on our campus at one time. And so it's very common that we would maybe have a week where there's no students on our campus at all because we're waiting for the next group to cycle in. So as far as evacuation and care, we are not really dealing with students, with one exception. One of my mission students was in a hospital in Odessa. We had evacuated her a month or so ago from Uganda, where we'd sent her on her mission internship. She had parasites and all kinds of tropical diseases, okay? It's hard to find somebody in Ukraine to treat tropical diseases, too, when it's snow on the ground. All right, but so we had her in a hospital there and was being treated for some tropical diseases. And we did evacuate her with our missions director out of Ukraine, out of Odessa and back to Western Ukraine. So, other questions? This is what our Bible college normally looks like. Yes, ma'am.
Siege is going to be over.
No.
What's that?
Do you know when this is going to be over?
Every day we extend that length of time a lot. The reason Regina went to Western Ukraine and stayed with friends is they thought that was going to be over very soon. Well, I'll go here, I'll stay for a few days, then I'll come back. We were encouraging Regina to stay in Ukraine. It's expensive for her to get on a plane, fly to New Orleans, and then have to fly back. That's absolutely something that they did not want to do. But she realized this is not going to be a short thing. Sasha realized this is not going to be over soon. A week ago, when we said we want to take $25,000 and try to pre-position that, then raise money and replace that money, that came out of our emergency fund, raise money and replace that, we were thinking that was really to cover the cost of travel away, stay for a week, and then come back. We were not planning, that number was not calculated based on any fighting, anything like that. That was not calculated based on what the situation on the ground today. That was just the idea of travel, stay for a week, and come back. So we don't know when it's going to be over, but it isn't going to be over soon. We will cancel our flight. They're giving us an opportunity to rebook it, but we're not going to do that because we don't know when to rebook a flight. In a month, in 6 months, those kind, we have no idea when to rebook a flight. Yes?
I know Sasha is still in Odessa.
Yes.
Where does he in the whole picture things? His family is obviously, he's got them to say.
He has his two brothers and their families. They're in their basement. His father was actually in the hospital in Odessa for some eye surgery. They picked him up, and I think Sasha's family lives 2 or 3 hours outside of Odessa in a very rural area, and his mother has stayed out there. And that's probably a safe area because it's an insignificant area. And so his parents are probably just going to stay where they are out in this rural area. But his two brothers lived in Odessa, and they came to stay in the basement because that was a safe place. Other questions? Oh, what is Sasha doing? Sasha is handling
Aid.
financial aid, help and assistance. Without him, okay, because I'm the American who lives in Odessa but is in America right now, other mission agencies have been contacting me and saying, Ray, we've got money, we know there's problems, how can we get it there? Can we send it to you? Can we do this? What can we do? Okay, I can say this, but Sasha is the one on the other end pulling money out of the pipe and handing that to, he's the one driving people to the grocery store saying, buy 3 months worth of stuff, we'll pay the bill, and so that's what he's busy doing right now. That's his ministry right now. Okay. Yes?
Have the Russians taken over your house?
What's that?
Have the Russians taken over your house?
No. It is, if I were, Ukrainians are not getting out. There is a curfew. You should not go outside. You couldn't have a church service. The church is literally within sight. It's 4.5 minutes walk from our house to the college and to the church. I can see the church outside my window. I can log on right now and see video cameras and the network system at our college. But I would not walk across the field to get to the church. We're not supposed to be outside. So that's a dangerous thing. So I'm sure there's no church services going on right now. Let me just give you a couple of pictures about where our house is. So here's the States, here's Ukraine, and this area right here, besides the state of Texas. So Ukraine is big. It's the second largest European country. Oh, I pushed the wrong button. There we go. All right. This is the Black Sea. Russia has ships in this area, and this is where was the area which we live. Literally, I can walk to the sea. It'd take me an hour, but 45 minutes, but I can walk to the sea. This is the area where our house is. This is our house right here. Walk out, walk across here. And I said it takes 4.5 minutes to walk to the college. And my office is right here in the back of this building right here. And this is our Bible college right here. We are on the very edge of the city of Odessa. We're just right outside the city limits. The city of Odessa is right over here, and I can see high-rise apartment buildings from our house.
You got 5 minutes.
I've got 5. Pam says I got 5 minutes.
No,
She
don't
said-
say that.
You know better than that. Okay, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What would the point be to where Sasha would also evacuate? Or would he?
All right, first of all, he cannot at this point in time. It would be foolish to try to leave the location that he is in and get to the border. One of the problems that we are having is the transfer of money because of a breakdown in the Ukrainian economic system. The border with the country of Moldova is 100 miles away. I wrote Sasha today or yesterday evening, and I said, what's the possibility of us wiring money into Moldova to some of the Christians who are there, and then bringing that to the border and handing that to you? He said, one, it's not safe to drive. You can't. He said, I can't move. Going out and moving for 100 miles, that's not safe to do that. Second, he said, it is a 42-hour wait in line at the Moldovan border. That's one of the busier ones. So, third, Sasha can't cross the border. He's a male between the age of 18 and 60. And Ukraine won't let their citizens cross the border. So Sasha can't leave the country. And he certainly would not want to go somewhere else. So he's in the best possible situation that he could be in. So, other questions?
Is the best way to send money is the part for Ukraine?
Okay, we are collecting money. I sent out a paper request with a return envelope. And the reason I did that is because Pam and I receive most of our financial support by paper, on paper checks mailed to that address in Fulton. And so that's how we are collecting money. One of the things that I've said to people is if you want to donate online, Regina and Sasha receive most of their financial support by people donating online. Go to their website. At the bottom of their website is a place to donate online. And some of our supporters have gone to Regina's website and donated online to do that.
You can get it on Facebook too.
Yeah, you can get it on Facebook. So we are working with Regina and Sasha, although we're separate organizations, but we're working with them to raise the same money to be distributed in the same way. So it really doesn't matter. If you're giving a check, it's easier to mail it to us. One of the things that I've stressed to people is we do need funds, but it's kind of like a week ago we put money into this pipeline, and it's kind of like a big snake, the big lump, they swallowed the rabbit or whatever snakes eat, pig, whatever. It's making its way through the snake, okay? And it's slowly coming out the other end. The problem right now is that we can't get it out the other end fast. We can't withdraw cash. Banks are not operational. What Sasha is using our debit card for two things. He's using our debit card. We have a special debit card for our organization, okay? He's using our debit card to pay bills at grocery stores. He's also using that card to transfer money to somebody else's Ukrainian debit card who may have already fled to Western Ukraine, and so that they can take their debit card and then go to the grocery store there and get something. So Sasha is distributing money. He's buying groceries, he's distributing groceries, and then he's transferring money and distributing money to our Ukrainian employees at our college. So I'm shoving money into the front of the snake. That's going down through the snake, coming out the other end, whichever is, however that works, okay? And Sasha's getting it out the other end of the snake, okay? That's taking a little bit of time. That's why we pre-positioned some money and said, okay, we're going to raise money. That was our emergency fund. We're going to raise money to replace that. So we are raising money to replace the money that's already making its way through the snake, okay?
You can make checks out to partners.
Make the check out to Partners in Missions and give that to them. That's the easiest thing. Or if you want to give online, go to Facebook or Regina and Sasha's website and give online through them. So, last question.
You just take cash.
Yes.
What's that?
I take cash!
All right.
What is their website?
Hearts for Ukraine.
Except that there's more than one of those. Except that there's more than one of those. There's more than one organization called Hearts for Ukraine. If you look on our website, Partners in Missions, scroll down to the bottom of the front page, there's a link to their website that says, look, if you want to, we don't take your online contributions, they will take your online contributions. And you'll see Regina and Sasha's picture there. The reason I say that is because there are two organizations called Hearts for Ukraine, and they do it a little slightly different, and you can't tell that. Just by Googling it, you won't necessarily get the right one. So, yes?
The way I understand that right is you said the money goes into an international account here, and they're able to use their debit card to draw off that account.
Right, yes.
So there is no way that Russia can get a hold of those.
Oh, no, that's you know, we're taught it's all in an American bank until they actually pull it out of the ATM machine or charge it at a local grocery store. It's all just like in your bank account right here. It's all in an American bank and until it's actually pulled out. So there's no risk of Russia getting that or anything like that. That is an interesting question because that is the reason that we cannot do an international wire transfer right now. Because that we think is risky. We think it's risky to do an international wire transfer simply because of the political situation, Russia hacking in. But in the system that we're using, it's in our American bank account until they actually spend it and take it out. Okay. All right. We'll answer whatever questions you want to, but one more.
And you told me before, but what is the difference in currency, our dollar versus Ukraine?
Don't know.
Don't know?
And the reason is because the Ukrainian currency is falling, significantly is plummeting. And I think the Russian currency is falling a whole lot more. But every time they do a transaction, you have to look at what it is at that moment in time. It is plummeting. So they're having to pull more and more paper out of the machine to buy or do whatever that they're doing. Let's close with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we face many uncertainties in life right here today in this place. Every person is in need of your continual care. Father, we realize we live in a messed up world where things are not as they should be. Things are not as we expect them to be. Things are not as we understand them. It doesn't make sense to us. Father, we also realize that that's true not only on the international scale, but on the personal scale as well. Our own lives are broken and messed up. We call upon you for your power, your strength, your care, that you are the way, the truth, and the life, and that you are our hope for today as well as for our eternity. Thank you for this time together tonight. So pray in Christ's name. Amen.